Hey everybody, Ralphar here. So 6 months is a long time to spend making a demo, and it's an even longer time to spend prototyping. For reference, I started working on my game F on August of last year. If someone were to get pregnant in August, by the time I have this video out, they would go into labor. So the last devlog was released about 4 months ago. I kind of disappeared for a bit because I just wasn't confident with the state of my game. But now it's probably time for an update on what I've been doing, and why I had to change all of the core gameplay mechanics. If you're an indie game developer, first of all, my condolences, but you may have seen this GDC talk by Mark Rosewater, the head designer of Magic the Gathering. There's a lesson from that video that really stuck with me. Don't confuse interesting with fun, which is probably something that happened with this game. One of the core mechanics of the old version was that player and enemy turns happen at the same time. So these red arrows are enemy telegraph attacks, but on your turn, you don't actually play your moves, you're planning them instead. The idea was that once you end your turn, both you and the enemy would get to play at the same time. So, everyone moves, and then everyone attacks. Now, you may be wondering what happens if multiple characters try to walk onto the same tile. And in this situation, both moves get cancelled. This is what's called a tile conflict. This guy's move gets cancelled, but he still gets to do his attack, although it's gonna come from where he's standing. Okay, so I showed an interesting consequence that stems from the core idea. Why is it still terrible? Well, number one, the game looked like this, and number two, it's actually just a terrible idea. Instead of lining up your attack on the enemy, you have to line it up with their destination. So every time I want to figure out what a character is doing, I have to follow their move, read what they're attacking, and follow another arrow back to see who it's going to hit. And it just takes a lot of effort to figure out what's happening on the board. I'm going to use Miro for this demonstration because it's a lot easier to explain that way. Let's say we have an enemy attack us like this, and because their attacks are telegraphed, I can just move out like this, right? And maybe even attack back. So, because I can just keep moving and attacking every turn, my characters are practically invincible, which makes the game really easy. So here's a solution. Speed. Characters with higher speed get to act first. Let's say the enemy has 3 speed and my character has 2. In this case, there would be no way for my character to dodge the attack, unless I had another character with a speed of 4 or more. Then I could use them and play a skill that, for example, pushes the enemy, so now there's a bit more tactics involved. For this to work, the 4-speed character has to be positioned close enough. So now the game was a bit more challenging, but why is it still the wrong solution? Well, this. Actually, speed makes this even worse, because on top of everything, I now have to figure out when this attack plays, will my target still be here, or will they have already moved? And another problem, and you may have already figured this out, but this solution only works for lower speed characters. The character with the highest speed is still completely invincible, and it's also made lower speed characters feel like a liability. If you'd like to see an example of a good solution to this problem, take the game I'm playing right now, which also happens to be the biggest inspiration for F. And here's a clip of the developers talking about this exact problem.
All of that, because a telegraph system means that that threat zone shrinks to something incredibly small. It becomes trivial to move a mech out of the way. The solution that, if you've played the game, you know we've ended up on, is that the buildings are where the primary problem lies, on that the enemies have to destroy the buildings to win, and the buildings, if they get destroyed, is how you lose. In hindsight, that seems ridiculously obvious, because buildings can't run away.
If I went through every tweak and every solution F has gone through, we'd probably be here for an hour, so let's keep it short. A lot of factors made me finally realize that my original idea for F wasn't really that good. So it was time for me to accept that we needed a new mechanic, one that fixes this gameplay issue and didn't cause any problems with the UI. Now I can't just add buildings into my game because, well, you know, that game already exists. But I now understand that the only time the enemy becomes a threat is when they're targeting something that can't move, or in other words, when they're targeting defenseless objects. I'm not an experienced developer, as you can obviously tell, but I also want to share a bit of what I learned. This time, not from another YouTuber telling me, but from my own experience. So if you're just here for some game dev advice, that's all I really have. Thanks for sticking by, but as for where development is heading, it's probably best if we start over. Okay, here's how the new version of the game works. We actually have 3 major mechanics working together, so let's tackle them one at a time. So, in F, enemy attacks are telegraphed. This guy, for example, is going to move over here and shoot in this direction, which will hit our character, who's called Silly. Placeholder names and sprites, obviously. So, If you've played Into the Breeze before, this mechanic will feel pretty familiar. If I push this enemy, you'll see its move destination has been shifted, and so has its attack. Now, you may be wondering, if I know where they're going to attack, can I just move out of the way? And the answer is yes, you can. So where's the threat? Well, that's where the second mechanic comes in. This big number on the top right corner is called the clock. It's what dictates when the enemies play their moves. Every time your character uses a skill, this number goes down by 1, and once it hits 0, the enemies attack. Now, a lot of strong enemies will play multiple skills per turn. You can click on them to see the list of skills they're using, though only the first one will be shown on the board. When the clock reaches 0, they'll play their first attack, but since they still have a few more skills left, the clock goes back to 3 and they immediately telegraph their next one. Now, your team can play multiple skills per turn, but a lot of them cost F, which is basically mana. And F only replenishes at the start of the turn, so if you run out, you'll be forced to end your turn, and ending your turn means accelerating the clock, making them effectively defenseless objects. Okay, so there's an actual threat now. The more actions an enemy has, the faster I need to kill it. But as it turns out, enemies with 1 or 2 actions end up being kind of pointless. That's because I can move my characters out of the way, get the clock down to 0, and I still end up with enough F to dodge the next attack. And that's why we need the final mechanic. Enemies evolve every turn. So currently, all it does is it gives them more actions per turn. But in the future, I think it'd be cool if each enemy had their own evolution path. Kinda like this. But anyway, as demonstration, this guy will play 2 attacks this turn. We have 2 characters, each with 1 F. Now by default, each skill can only be used once per turn, so Silly can use 2 skills this turn. We'll use a 1-cost skill and this free skill. Sillier can use Whiplash, which is also a 1-cost skill, and now the clock will go down to 0, so the enemy attacks. And you can dodge the next attack with Bullseye, so we ended the turn taking 0 damage without putting that much thought into the game at all, because we just kept dodging. Now, this next turn is going to show you the biggest flaw of our defensive playstyle. Aside from 2 new enemies spawning, the biggest threat is this enemy we left alive now has 3 actions per turn. Both of our characters have gained 2F, but that's still not enough to dodge his last attack. If we leave him alive again, next turn he'll have 4 actions. But remember, if we leave any of these guys alive, they'll gain more actions next turn. So I'm hoping this is a good way to force players to play aggressively and engage with the game mechanics. Alright, let's see how we can deal with this. Okay, so looks like I can only get this guy down to 1 HP, but that's not a problem because dealing a single point of damage next turn shouldn't be too difficult. So that was the basic gameplay of F. I hope it wasn't too complicated to follow along, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'm not a big YouTuber, so I can read and respond to every comment. Obviously the game is far from being releasable as a tech demo, and so expect there to be a lot of changes. I'm planning to call this demo F Blue Light. It will be playable on your browser for free, and it should cover most of the combat mechanics. I really want to be able to tell what part of the game is fun and what isn't, so I can see what to put in the final game, which is gonna be called EPHLOG. Oh, and if anyone's wondering, the story of these 3 games are connected. If you'd like to follow Blue Light's development, or you just want to say hi, you can join our Discord server in the description. But either way, thank you for clicking on this video, and thank you very much for watching.